Starting the video. Yeah, go ahead and move whatever you need. Except for my bucket. I need my bucket. Okay, so if you recall, last class we put the plaster mother mold after we had applied the window caulking silicone side A blanket mold. So now we are ready to flip everything over and take the next steps. So what I'm going to do is, carefully remove the clay bed. Presumably it should just pull away because the clay's kind of dried out a little bit, and I'm quite sure that if I don't have anything caught, it should come away pretty easily. And what you want to really be careful of in this process is not to dislodge your pattern. Disturb. Yeah, so you want to make, so I don't want my light bulb to come out at all. And I have that clay coil is still stuck in here, so I'm getting rid of all of that. But I've got my hands on the light bulb so it doesn't come out, and I'm just using a tool to pop out all of the clay coil that was creating my parting line. And once you get all of the clay bed removed, I would advise cleaning the surface. So if you have any clay on your pattern, make sure that you sponge that away. And if you've got any clay in the silicone side A, I would also remove that so that it's as clean and pristine as possible. Okay. Questions so far? So my next step is my mold release. Super, super, super important. Okay. So I'm just going to take some Vaseline, and over the silicone I can just be generous and not so crazy careful, right? So I'm not worried about disturbing texture with my Vaseline application on the silicone flange. Allergies, this like roller coaster with our weather. I don't know about you all, but my allergies have been going nuts. What's that, Kanani?
They said it was sunny and gloomy.
I know. And if you need a brush to kind of get Vaseline into the little nooks and crannies, that's always a smart move. And then I also, of course, want to apply the Vaseline onto my pattern as well, but this is where I'm going to be more careful about the application and make sure that I'm doing a thin coat. So careful that your Vaseline does not create its own texture on your pattern. if there's a little bit, it's not the end of the world. It just means that every time you pull the casting out, you're doing a little bit more finishing work than you would otherwise. So probably a little bit more sanding, a little bit more carving, just to make it look as you want it to look. Okay? So just to recap, Vaseline on the silicone flange, lighter coat of Vaseline over the pattern. Yeah.
So when you did the first side, you used the like spray universal mold release. Is there a reason you swapped to Vaseline?
No. Your good memory, good note taking, but no, there's no reason. Yeah.
So with the caulking silicone, they're like interchangeable, you would say?
On the pattern, yes.
Okay.
To a certain degree. I'm trying to think if there was any, like, if my pattern was something that had, if it was cloth or if it had a lot of texture, I might, if I'm using the spray release, I would just make sure that I'm spraying it really, really thoroughly to get down into all of those little nooks and crannies. Otherwise, I feel like they are interchangeable. Good question. All right, anything else? Yeah.
At this point, would you, if you forgot your keys, would you have parked it before you put the Vaseline in it?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so, right. So what you could do,
Who took any notes?
so the question was, if you forgot to make the registration keys on side A, is there any way to make them at this point? And you could potentially, because hopefully your silicone application was on the, within the range of like 1/4 of an inch, so like a little bit thicker, certainly thicker than what you're doing with latex, right? And so if it is thick enough to accommodate you kind of cutting out a little divot, you can do that, okay? Like a scoop, yeah. And that would be the kind of the only way to do it. You couldn't do like, Ian, what you did with the hot glue to make like the registration keys on side A. It's not like I could add hot glue to this because it's, maybe it could stick. If it would stick
It
and be,
wouldn't help you register because it would just be a little hole.
well,
Unless-
it only
unless it
if
stayed
the
on there
hot
forever.
glue could be permanently part of the equation. Or, Tracy, the other thing that you could do is before you put any silicone on, or I'm sorry, any Vaseline on here, once you flip it, clean it off, you could take a little bit more silicone and do your little dots. You'd have to let that dry completely, but then you could do side B.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because that is a way to save the situation,
I guess
so.
if you did that, you'd want to put like some Dawn on your fingers and tap it so that it was smooth and didn't have like a weird top that was all.
Yeah,
Just
that's
to make sure it was
probably
like
a
a
good
good
idea, so
rounded
that, it is blended to the silicone below.
To make a couple bumps.
Yeah, so that then you don't have things like slipping under that little button. Yes, I think that's advisable. Okay, any other questions before I show you the next steps?
So just for the metal shims, it's like the same process, so just pull them out. open up your-
Yes, if you're doing metal shims instead of the clay bed, you're then very carefully pulling all of the shims out. You will very likely have to do a little bit of repair work because of course the shim creates an incision and you want to like re-perfect that clay surface. So just with a blending tool, just kind of erase the insertion line. Yeah, that should do it. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so got my tub of water and my soap already in here. I'm just breaking up the soap so that it's throughout. And I know that you can probably guess all of the next steps, but I'll just show you so that you see the whole process. So, a couple of snakes of silicone into the water. Release the pressure so that it doesn't continue to ooze. And then I'm reaching in here with a gloved hand to scoop up my little snakes.
Does it matter if, oh, I guess it will. Do you need to make sure that's completely dry before you put the mold release on it?
Yes. Yeah, you want the silicone to be dry before you put the mold release on. So again, just a reminder, don't overwork the silicone. You are just smoothing things so that you get as flat a surface as possible. So pet your silicone. I can't promise it'll be good. And then you're just very carefully laying it down over your pattern, trying not to trap any air bubbles, and gently pushing it down right against the previous layer, or the layer of side A. And then you would just repeat this process and build it all the way out. Did you have a question?
Oh,
No? Okay. You're being recorded, but you can still ask questions.
I'll ask it later. It's like stuff that I feel like I'm missing steps. Like I know you have the videos on.
Yeah, all the videos are on Canvas now. It's module 1.5. And again, don't be afraid of, in fact, you want the silicone patties to overlap one another so that you don't have a break in your mold. And you also want to not let the silicone patties get too much, like 1/4 of an inch is kind of the sweet spot, where it's not too thick.
And it's kind of hard to tell because the other silicone is pretty much the same color.
It is, so you're just kind of you can see the thickness if you really scrutinize, and you can see where the lower layer is.
Well, and if you know how big your lower layer is,
What's that?
if you know that your lower layer is 1/4 of an inch already.
I mean, if you're uncertain, you can always stick a needle tool in or something, you know.
you know, the also is right out, but are you concerned about any of the water getting onto the mother mold?
No, plaster or water on the mother mold of side A, that's not gonna matter. Once plaster cures, it can get wet, like it's not gonna hurt anything. And I'm taking this out to meet the edge of the layer of the silicone below as, you know, evenly as possible. If there's a little bit of overlap or, you know, some parts of it end up sticking together, you can always cut that away. I just have a tiny bit more to do right there, so it's maybe like half a little snake of clay, of silicone. So again, if you find that the silicone is sticking to your gloves, just, you might need a little bit more soap. Like I found a gooey spot, so I just kind of like rinse my hand in here and like get a coating of the Dawn on the glove, and then usually it'll let go. And that's it. So now I just wait until the silicone is set, which should be about half an hour. And then I can do the second side of the plaster mother mold. And then my mold is done. And then I can start using it. Okay? So,
Does it have the quarter inch thickness over the?
yeah. Yeah, thereabouts. Yeah.
From here, it's like it's standing up.
It's standing up.
As in, like, you know, there isn't enough coverage on top, I think.
Oh, well, I mean, listen, it's all not quite a guessing game, but it's not, you're not, because of the way that you're applying this, that you're never going to have it like perfectly even the whole way. But if you're ever unsure, you can just kind of, while it's still not set, you can kind of scoot the silicone around. Yes.
So how long does this process take from beginning to end, as needed?
I would say 2 to 3 hours, because it's gonna take, I mean, it also depends on how big your pattern is, right? If you're doing something much larger, it's gonna take longer to put the silicone over. But something in this size, you know, this, I don't know, what did it take me to apply this? It was maybe 10, 15 minutes to apply the silicone for each side, plus the setup, which, depending on your familiarity with the process, could take a half an hour to an hour. And then the plaster mother mold, again, is, you know, it's a half an hour for each side. So I would say realistically 3 to 4 hours. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. I will upload this probably this evening.